Man, considering the latest article I wrote, I really like the wrestling at the end of this. Greetings! I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast for all the returning listeners, subscribers, and of course, our very valued patrons. Thank you so much for coming back. To those new to the channel, thank you for taking a moment to check us out. If you dig what we're doing, please hit like and subscribe. It is a passive gesture that goes a long way in promoting the channel. I want to send a big shout out to everyone that joined us last night for our 2025 NFL season preview on Beyond the Red Zone. I have to say that was the first time I attempted to distract Mac for no good reason, mind you. And he did a phenomenal job staying on topic. If you watch the show on YouTube, we have playlists for all of our shows in chronological order, so it's easy for you to find them. So we definitely have a playlist for the TIR main shows, Beyond the Red Zone, Pop Life, even Gaming Materialist, the Mau Mau Hour. They're all there. Also, tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time, I'll be speaking with the host of the Alpha Bunga Bunga podcast, Alex Aculi, about his latest article on total capitalism versus techno-feudalism. Who wins? Should be a good one. And also, don't forget, for all the patrons and paid YouTube subscribers, we'll be having a fun movie night. Halloween is right around the corner, and what better way to count down Candy Christmas than with a suspenseful flick? We'll be watching 2013's Blue Ruin, a story about the reality of revenge. If you've read issue number 9 from the Crisis Papers, Living in the Bronson Age, then you would probably dig this movie. Now, if you want to join us for movie night, if you want to join us for things like we're doing tonight after this show, the Champagne Room, there's only one way: become a patron, or I guess there's two ways, or a paid YouTube subscriber. For as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year, you can get access to the Crisis Papers. Join us for movie nights, and if you can't make movie night, get the movie night replay, and you get the satisfaction of knowing that your small donation allows TIR to stay on the air. Now, let's talk about why you guys are really here. Ultra leftists.
We're coming for you, nigga.
Whoa. What does it truly mean to be a leftist? Is it a moral framework that shapes how you see the world? Or is it more about signaling virtue, intelligence, or cultural cachet? For some, leftism is an artistic rejection of capitalist norms, a rhetorical weapon against entrenched power. For others, it's a deeply personal stance rooted in individuality, a belief that they alone hold the key to a just and socialist future. But if our politics become more about being right or being seen as persecuted intellectuals than about coalition building and winning reforms, are we really advancing our cause? Too often, leftist discourse becomes a performance, punditry as personal branding in the social media era, where dissent is commodified and political peacocking becomes a way to stand out. In that environment, maximalist positions, whether abolish the police or abolish prisons, can generate attention, but do they actually help us win? Not long ago, the cultural left dominated the landscape with shows like Girls, Broad City, and Insecure, shaping conversation, but people voted for Trump. So what did they all mean? My guest today, Ben Burgis, argues that the left's obsession with maximalist rhetoric often comes at the expense of long-term strategy in connecting with the masses. In his Jacobin article, which you can find in the description of this show, Politics Are Supposed to Convince People, Not Grandstand, he writes, foregrounding maximalist demands, whether they be intelligible or unintelligible, only makes sense if you think we should be primarily concerned with appealing to the most radical among us. That is, with gaining the approval of people to the left of standard socialist opinion. In reality, by orders of magnitude that are hard to overstate, most people are to our right. Connecting with them is our responsibility. Writing them off as hopeless reactionaries because they don't co-sign our best and worst. Maximum Program planks is a way to guarantee political irrelevance, unquote. To have this conversation with Ben Burgis. I have my homie, my dog, my co-host, the man of the Mau Mau Hour. I have the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason, Mizzy Miles.
Yee. Are you ready for tonight?
I'm ready for the SmackDown.
This woman is always ready for the SmackDown. She is the voice of reason on this show. She is the Tucson. M. Tucson.
Hello. Can either of you tell me what my yellow diamonds look like?
No.
All right, fine.
I did cut a clip called Yellow Diamonds Look Like PP.
Yes.
And I have a picture of the thumbnail is a picture of the clips, and then it's a picture of a urinal, like a little thing of a urinal is filled with yellow diamonds.
Yay.
So if that doesn't make people click, then they don't care about us. Then they don't really care about us.
It's important.
Timothy Cornerson said, "PP." And give a big, gigantic TIR welcome to returning guest, Jacobin columnist, professor, and my neighbor, Ben Burgis.
Going on?
We have double applause for you, Ben. Did you know that StreamYard added their own sound effects?
I did not know.
You Ben rushing to get onto the stream.
Ben was rushing like this. His legs were just in a cloud. Pascal, I'm sure you want to start this show off with a question because you've gotten your face all up in the screen. Let's go. Shoot, champ.
So, Ben, I read your article. I found it interesting to say.
Yeah.
Quite provocative. One of the provocations that struck me the most was that one of the signs of maximalist ideas on this putative left you're talking about, that posturing radicalism, is their belief that we should not run within the two-party system. And according to your notion, you believe that the practical way to be a leftist is to run within the confines of the two-party system, most likely the Democratic Party, like i.e., Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Zoran Mamdani. Now, as I've challenged you before, haven't we already seen the limitations in terms of where that politics has taken us, in terms of where all those so-called putative leftists either have to compromise their agenda to meet the actual position of the Democratic Party or sign on to more egregious foreign policy aspects of mainstream Democratic politics that normally would be egregious to the left? So why can't we find a place for us in third-party politics where we can actually appeal to our politics by giving more political education to the masses instead of appealing to people who may actually be political or class enemies?
Yeah, I think we've run the experiment, and exactly the opposite of what you just said is proven over and over and over to be true in every possible way. So we've run both experiments, right? So we've tried third-party experiments within the framework of America's electoral system, and we've tried it, 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 and it's gotten exactly nowhere, right? That experiment could not have been more decisively run, right? So if you want to compare the track records, right, of sort of the post-Bernie moment from 2015 to 2025, on the one hand, when you have, Bernie Sanders breakthrough run for the Democratic nomination, and then the election of Bernie-crats, and things like, for example, the Zoran Mamdani run. Right now, then, of course, there are many defeats and disappointments and setbacks. But at the end of the day, what that means is that it's only the case that there are a handful of members of Congress who were elected on this platform, and it's only the case that a socialist candidate, came in second in two major party presidential nominations, and it's only the case that you get a socialist who wants to experiment with city-owned grocery stores and push for free childcare, et cetera, who's about to, unless anything horrible goes wrong in the next few months, become the next mayor of New York. Whereas when we've tried this third-party experiment over and over and over again, then what we've got is exactly nowhere, right? We've got, you can go back and, the first vote I ever cast when I was 20 years old was for Ralph Nader in the 2000 election. He got about 3% of the vote, and not only has that never been exceeded in the 25 years since then, in which a great deal of the left has been invested in that project, but nobody else has even come close to matching that record, right? I mean, in fact, nobody else has even gotten half of what Ralph Nader got in 2000 in that time. And one last point about this, because you brought up the issue about egregious foreign policy positions, and a contrast that I can't help but think of is 2014, the last sort of major Israeli bombing campaign in Gaza before the one that started almost 2 years ago. And I can remember it very well. I can remember spending a lot of time arguing with people about it. I can remember, destroying at least one friendship over disagreements about that. But what I don't remember is there being any members of Congress who were speaking out about what was happening. Whereas now, you have Bernie-crats who, I think there are legitimate criticisms you can make. There are criticisms I would agree with you can make, but they have, you have Bernie-crats who are calling, who are out there on the floor of the House calling for a ceasefire by late October. People who have by and large voted against weapons shipments. You just had a Bernie Sanders-led effort to cut off munition sales to Israel that actually won over the majority of the Democratic caucus, which would have just been utterly beyond unthinkable in 2014. And I have a really, whatever criticisms you want to make, whatever respects in which you don't think it goes far enough, and I'm sure you and I could get together on a lot of that, it kind of blows my mind that there's any perspective from which it's a bad thing that you have this level of visible opposition, as opposed to people just making this purely symbolic effort of third-party candidates in an electoral system that doesn't meaningfully allow for that, as the U.S. doesn't. Which, again, we've got like the last century of that being continually tried and coming to nothing.
Pascal, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, but I would contend that what we get when we get these third party, when we get these nominal socialists who become the Democratic Party, is that the Democratic Party co-opts them to sign on to agendas that normally, or as they did with Hakeem Jeffries, tries to sabotage them. For example, what happened in Buffalo, when we had socialists who actually became mayor, and the Democratic Party basically ran a subsequent election to remove her from power. And what I find is that as much as we talk about us joining them, it doesn't stop them from trying to continually.
What would stop that if she was a Green Party candidate?
Well, I don't think that they would have been able to. I think they had a referendum within the Democratic Party to neutralize her.
Well, no. What happened was that she won the Democratic nomination, and then the incumbent mayor ran as a write-in candidate because she was running as the Democratic candidate, and she beat him as a write-in. He beat her as a write-in candidate, and if he could beat her as a write-in candidate, then I think there's really no question whatsoever that he would have beaten her as a Green Party candidate. That the People's Party candidate. I mean, that's in fact, the history, I mean, as far as I know, the number of recent examples of cities the size of Buffalo that have elected a Green Party or People's Party or et cetera, mayor running on that ballot line is zero, right? The closest analogy that I'm familiar with is Kashama Sawant in Seattle. And, that wasn't becoming mayor of Seattle. That was winning a city council seat. And the important thing to note there is that city council races in Seattle are nonpartisan. Right, so she didn't have to get people to pull the lever for somebody with Green Party or Socialist Alternative next to her name. Right, it was a nonpartisan race. And in fact, when Kashama Sawant has tried to do things like run for state senate on the Green Party candidate, platform, or I'm not sure, maybe she was doing it as an independent. That's come to nothing. So look, I mean, I certainly agree with half of what you said. Right, like you said that. That when you have people who run as leftists, as socialists, on the they contest for the Democratic Party ballot line, and I don't even think these are parties in the sense that European parties are parties, or like that they have parties here in Mexico. I think these are ballot lines, and I think that's a very different thing, right? There's no such thing as being a member of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. But yeah, it's true. When socialists run for the Democratic Party ballot line, of course, establishment Democrats do everything that's possible to stop them and sabotage them, as you said. That's not wrong. But as with the earlier point about the track record of this strategy versus the track record of running third party, it's always a comparative question. We always have to compare, okay, well, what are the ways they can sabotage you if you do this with what are the ways that they can and do sabotage you if you run third party? And I mean, my God, let's count the ways. I mean, of how third party candidates are sabotaged, from the continually changing laws about how many signatures you have to collect by when to even make it on the ballot in the first place, to debate commissions, excluding them, to et cetera, right? So it's like, yeah, sure, of course, establishment centrists are going to be opposed to socialists. They're going to try to sabotage them. They're going to try to do what they can to stop them. Goes without saying, right? But fish got to swim, birds got to fly. But the question is, are the forms of sabotage that they've been able to throw up more effective in stopping people, running as socialists and Democratic primaries, or have they been more effective in stopping third-party candidates? And it seems to me that the forms of sabotage they have available to them have been way more effective in stopping third-party candidates.
Pascal?
No, I take his position. I'm not saying I agree with it, but
So you just want to be the ultra leftist in the room?
And Pascal has taken a position here that's very common. I mean, I think a lot of I think a lot of people who are principled, committed people do take this position, and I understand why. Right? I just disagree.
I mean, I just don't think that being a leftist means surrendering to support a bourgeois capitalist party. I think that we should try to fight the two-party system and try to engage in a multi-party political platform as much as possible. Simply surrendering to the fact that, well, we have a two-party system and that's all that can happen, to me is just it renders us too null and void. I mean, I think that it's more important to fight for the ability to have a multi-party system and neutralize the power of the duopoly than to simply kowtow.
So can I ask you a question before you say more? I get it.
Yeah.
What do you want Mondami to do then? You want him to run as a third-party candidate?
I wouldn't.
There's a system. There's a machine in place when you run as a Democrat, and you understand that. Whether you think the machine is corrupt or not. Okay. There's a machine in place, and you're saying F that machine. We're going to start a new machine from scratch, and we're going to win in this election cycle.
Well, there's no question that Mamdani wouldn't even be talked about if he didn't win the Democratic primary.
So he's a sellout? What is he?
No, I'm not. I never called anyone a sellout. Those are your words, not mine. What I'm saying is that there's no question that when you work within the confines of the Democratic Party, all of the baggage of what the Democratic Party means to the party comes. So
he shouldn't do what he's doing.
I wouldn't listen. Zohran Mamdani winning the Democratic primary in New York was something that definitely put shockwaves within the mainstream Democratic Party.
Sure.
I would have rather him won
Mhm.
a significant block of votes as a third-party candidate than have to resort to running as a Democrat, simply because I know that he's going to have to sacrifice his principles in many ways governing as a Democrat.
Let's say he wins as a third-party candidate. You don't think he has to ever sacrifice any principles or make
Part
any
of politics
sort of...
is having to make compromises. I'm willing enough to realize that. But there's a difference between having to surrender to the edicts of a third party that you're representing than having to compromise on your own.
Tony Red made an interesting point. He said, if you don't think you can tear a party up from within inside, look at Trump. We're not looking at Reagan era Republicans anymore. Everything is different from what's inside that party because of what, 2 election cycles of Donald Trump, 3 technically. So you think the Democratic Party just can't change if there's a candidate that powerful, or do you think the Democratic Party is too powerful for any candidate?
I think the Democratic Party is particularly very effective at neutralizing people to its left.
Can I jump in? I just want to go back to what Pascal said a minute ago, right? Because he talked about surrendering to the 2-party system versus fighting it, and I want to just say one thing about that, and then also about this issue about the sort of compromises people make when they're in power, right? So I think that on the surrender issue, of course, right? I mean, as leftists, as socialists, right? I mean, the world that we're operating within is not the one we want in a million ways. I mean, this is, that's, maybe seems trite even saying that out loud, right? But I mean, you're always operating within confines set by systems that you fundamentally disagree with. If you're organizing a union at a workplace and your big victory is getting a contract that, gets you some of the things that you want, right? I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're literally making a deal with the boss who continues to be in power, who continues to own the place and exercise power within it, which we fundamentally object to, right? But I wouldn't say that we're surrendering to capitalist property relations when we do that. I think that that's a way of building up power and for a long-term fight against that, right? And I'd say something very similar here, that if we ever did get, if there ever was a situation where there were more than 2 viable political parties in the American system, I don't think it would come from getting a party that started out getting 1% of the vote every time and then got 2% and 3%, over the course of the decades. I think there are too many incentives in the system going against that. I think it would have to come from some sort of more organic rupture within a party, like the way that in the 19th century, Lincoln's Republicans, sort of emerged from the collapse of the Whigs. And I think if that ever happened, it would be because we're sort of building up these contradictions within the Democratic Party. One other thing, right, I did just want to say before I forgot about it, is on this question about compromises once you achieve power, I would just point out that if you look at the track record of European countries or Latin American countries that have very different political systems than ours, right? I mean, the whole U.S. electoral system is rigged to make sure that that you can only have 2 ballot lines that are viable at any given time. The combination of the first past the vote post, right? We don't have proportional representation, and the way the actual balloting works like almost guarantees that. But look, if you look at all these countries that have parliamentary systems where it's much easier for small parties to operate, and then you look at the trajectory of those small parties once they're in power, oftentimes the issues are not that different, right, than the issues that you or I might have with some Bernie-crats who come to power and make choices that we don't like, right? That because for one thing, inevitably small parties, in order to do anything at all, are having to collaborate with larger parties, right, at different times, enter into coalitions with them. That's something you get with small socialist and communist parties and every parliamentary system in the world. And for another thing, I mean, I think there are just a lot of pressures that are innate within holding state power within capitalism that put pressure on politicians. So we've been talking about the Green Party in the US, but I mean, the track record of the Green Party in Germany, for example, is horrible. I mean, much worse than the sort of worst criticisms you could make of somebody like AOC, or different politicians in the U.S. who you might have issues with, and so I guess my suspicion, maybe you see this differently, is that the source of the problem there is not so much which ballot line you're running on, as the sort of dynamics of socialists who are a minority within the sort of overall political system, trying to exercise a little bit of power within, this kind of capitalist terrain.
Toussaint, do you want to add anything since you are actually in New York?
I just want to know, Ben Burgis.
Yeah.
Why do you hate leftists?
There's so many reasons. Mostly because I'm secretly a right winger. I mean, I think at some point it might be interesting to kind of we sort of dived in at sort of one particular kind of aspect of the article, right? That comes pretty laid in with this example about how to think about sort of tactically navigating getting on ballot lines, so you can actually win the occasional election within the confines of the U.S. system.
Mm-hmm.
But the point of the article, but it's like that's a sort of one small point within a much broader case about how it is that socialists have historically thought about and might usefully think about how to sort of balance radical long-term goals against trying to get something done right now.
Mm-hmm. I feel like you're wearing red to make yourself seem more left than everyone else on the show today.
Well, this is not even like a leftist T-shirt. I do own some of those, but this is the Red Wings, which is not a socialist organization.
Okay.
A real socialist would have had a Packers shirt. How do you define maximalist politics, and why do you think these positions have become so prominent in online left spaces?
Yeah, so when you talk about maximalism, I think you mean two things, right? So one of them has to do with the division that socialists have always made between having a minimum program and a maximum program. So a maximum program is your long-term radical goals. A minimum program is the steps in the right direction that you think we might be in a position to take right now, right? And so when you're talking about maximalism, you might mean two different things. One of them is just sort of making our maximum program like a litmus test that, we're not going to fuck with you if you're not on board with all of our sort of most ambitious long-term demands, right? That's one thing that it might mean. And then I actually like Dio a lot, Jake. As far as Sabbath goes, I do.
Don't let those people derail you. Do not let those people derail you.
Don't look at the chat.
Don't stare into the chat or the screen as I put insane comments on the screen.
Dio solo is very good. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, but yeah, I think that so that's one thing we might mean, right? The other thing we might mean is just kind of having a maximum program that's like maximalist in the sense that it just like goes beyond anything that even really makes sense, right? Because we're just sort of trying to sound like we're the most radical radicals in Radical Town. So there are lots of examples on the first point of things that are like part of a maximum program that I think everybody on the screen would sign on to, right? I certainly would, right? I mean, look, we want workers control the means of production, or like just to sort of focus on like a particular part of the economy. We've got think about like healthcare. I mean, even Medicare for all. That's not really a sort of socialist maximum program for healthcare, right? Because Medicare for All is just making the insurance a single public plan, which obviously would be really good. But if we're just kind of sitting down and thinking through a priori, it's like, okay, well, socialists, what do we want for the healthcare sector? It's like, well, look, sure, we want to nationalize the insurance, but also the hospitals, right? I mean, we should like the NHS did when that was created in 1948 in Britain, right? That the hospitals should be public too. The doctors and nurses should be public employees. Hell, if we're really going nuts here, right? Those public employees should run the hospitals democratically, whatever, right? We can keep going and going and going. And this is all stuff that's good stuff that I agree with all of these things, right? Like if I could just like snap my fingers and reorient the world around me, or like I had a genie, who gave me enough wishes that I was going to spend one of them on this, right? That I would absolutely do all that, right? But
you better spend one of them on this.
Yeah, I probably
what?
Should. Whenever you get genie questions, you do want to be careful about committing too quickly about what your wishes are, right? But the reason that we have a minimum program, right? The reason that socialists have understood for a long time that it was important to have a minimum program is that, like, look, what we all agree to among ourselves that this is the best thing ideally isn't necessarily what we can get the whole like general public or the majority of the working class on board with at any given moment, right? So what we need, so it's like, look, yeah, sure, if I could just snap my fingers, full socialism now. But I don't think that, most of the American public right now is on that page, right? I think what we can get together a winning coalition for right now, the same way that what you can do at a workplace in the next 6 months might be to organize a union and make a better deal with the boss to get you some more overtime pay or something, right? Like I think what we can do right now is get the majority of working class people on board with a program that renegotiates the social contract in a way that's better for poor and working people and lays the basis for the next round of struggle going forward, right? So I think that's why like maximalism in that sense, that it's like we really foreground even the good maximal program and like say, no, this is what everybody has to agree with this. If you don't agree with this, you suck, right? Or like going back to the foreign policy stuff, I'd say like if I could just like snap my fingers and make it so, right? I mean, like the maximum program I'd want on Israel Palestine is that it would be it would become a single democratic state, from the river to the sea with equal rights for everybody and right of return for refugees, etc. Right? But I think it's a mistake to say anybody who doesn't pass that litmus test of signing on to that kind of principled anti-Zionism right this second is therefore an enemy who should be denounced, even if as a politician they're doing things like leading efforts to cut off arms sales to Israel during the genocide, right? I think that's the short-term priority, right? Then the other question is I think the worst kind of maximalism is like that, except the maximal program doesn't even make sense, right? And so I think different slogans about like abolish this, that, or the other thing, where like half the time the people who talk that way can't even coherently explain what they mean by abolishing it. I think that's one step worse.
Pascal, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, I think that we have to really make a distinction between whether or not we believe the maximalist program is a good program that is not practical for our current moments, or whether or not we believe that the maximalist program in and of itself is not worthy pursuing. And we also, to distinguish, to heighten your own distinction, there's a distinction between agreeing that the maximalist program is good and agreeing that it's good, but penalizing people who may agree with us on other subject matters for not adhering to that maximalist program. Which exactly describes your politics more than the other? Saying that having maximalist programs is not the problem. It's trying to have a purity contest that's more of an issue for the left? Or are you saying that the left has too many maximalist programs that you feel are unviable or just not plausible at all?
Well, I mean, both of those are points I just made. I agree with both of those distinctions. I make both of those distinctions in the article, right? Like in other words, I think that even with maximal programs that make sense, that I would agree with, you would agree with, we would all agree with, right? I think that it's a mistake to sort of make it a litmus test for differentiating between friends and enemies in the next 5 minutes. But I also think that some of the maximal programs that are put up by the left right now, and even some of the ones that people want to turn into litmus tests, don't even make sense, right? I mean, that was the point about the different abolish slogans.
Well, now obviously, one of the problems I think that some people on the left may have is that they would ask, well, who are you to determine what exactly the left should and shouldn't do in the first place? And why does Ben Burgis think anyone should be paying attention to his druthers anyway to decide what the left should? Since I would argue that there is no left, there are only leftists anyway. And all of us, don't have the power to pop a grape.
Sure. Well, I agree with that last point. I mean, that's the whole point. That's what we're trying to change, right? I mean, that's the reason to get right about all this stuff, so we can change that reality and build a more effective left. And the question is, why should people listen to Ben Burgis, in the sense that like they should just like defer to me, right? It's like, I don't know, what does Ben think? Okay, well, I guess that's what we should do, right? No further questions. Then I would say you shouldn't. That would be asinine. Nobody should just defer to me. I mean, this is Eugene Debs, who is a much more impressive person than Ben Burgis, said, accomplished many more things, and in the world, had a classic line where he said, I can't lead you to the promised land. I wouldn't if I could, because if I could lead you into it, I could lead you out of it, right? The whole point is that you want people to think for yourselves. So I don't want anybody to defer to what I say. There's nothing special about me. My whole point is to coin a phrase, give them an argument to try to persuade them that I'm right? So it's not about who's making the argument, right? That this is Ben Burgis saying this, or this is Pascal Robert saying this, or this is Jason Miles saying this, or this is the mysterious woman behind the blank screen saying this, right? They have it's that the argument itself, I think is a good argument. Now you might disagree, and you can make a counter argument, and we can talk about that. But that's the whole point, right? That's like, people have to figure this stuff out for themselves. They have to think for themselves. And I'm putting forward a case for what I think they should do.
Pascal, I mean, the same can be said to you, because you've written definitely a lot of things about what Negroes should do. So should we all listen to you? No? You don't want to have a whole show? You have a whole show for yourself where people should listen to you.
I'm not posturing for the position of Negro whisperer by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, you told us off air that you were the show enough of Negro whisperers.
Not so, comrade. Not so.
Dizzle McFizzle says I have to read his super chat. Thank you very much for the super chat. You saying a lot of words, Ben. I'm going to take them as disrespect. Watch your mouth and vote for Mondami.
Well, that's that's my whole point. I do want people to vote for Mondani. I love what Mondani is doing. I think that's like I think that we have a few models going on right now for how leftists could act. Right? There's the Kashama Sawant model. There's the Breonna Joy Gray model. There are a few, right? I think the best one going right now is the Mamdani model. I think that he's the guy who's putting forward, like right now at this moment, the most effective message in the most effective way that I like.
But
Mamdani is definitely making waves in the overall political constellation. We have yet to see, number one, if he wins, and we also yet to see how he's going to govern with the kind of political atmosphere that he's in New York, and whether or not this turns into just him being nothing but Bill de Blasio light.
But also, he's already backed down off of his magnetize the enchilada rhetoric. So
wait. This is lore that I'm not familiar with. You're gonna have to unpack this for me.
He's backed down off of his rhetoric about magnetizing the enchilada.
Oh yeah. The hilarious thing about that whole controversy is that he never once said it, right? Mm-hmm. Like It was never his rhetoric. It was somebody asked him what he thought about it. And in his original answer, he said, well, I wouldn't talk that way. Right. But like, I would, like that's not the way I would communicate or recommend that people would, but I understand what they mean. And I'm not going to like denounce them for you. And since then he's been saying different versions of that, but like, it's been spun into this thing that's like, oh, he used to say, magnetize the enchilada, and now he backed down from it, right? It's like it's.
Wait, did he literally say magnetize enchiladas?
No,
that's some New York shit. They don't know Mexican food. Keep them motherfuckers away from Mexican food.
Yes,
I'm tired of lying ass New Yorkers. We got Mexicans here. No, you don't.
Something that rhymes with the first word, and then something that rhymes with the last word. I don't know if MT is just being cute or she's not saying it because like YouTube wouldn't like it. So I'm gonna.
Oh, you talking about when he talked about about the intifada? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what they call it.
Yeah. But you got a lot of people throwing out the Zoran baby with the bathwater already.
Pascal's throwing him out.
I'm not saying
Pascal throws out all babies.
Why do you hate family?
Pascal.
Look at him. He just threw out a baby before the show started.
I don't throw out all babies, baby. Comrade, you really are taking this to a whole new level. I am healthy. I have a healthy skepticism of Zoran Mamdani. I support his effort. I'm glad he beat. Listen, everyone knows I don't support Eric Adams. I don't like Eric Adams, and I definitely don't support Andrew Cuomo. So if there's going to be any candidate that I hope wins that election, it's going to be Zoran Mamdani. But at the same time, I have seen, a la AOC, how we've had leftists be co-opted by the Democratic Party before and end up becoming simply kind of bandwagoneers for DNC talking points.
Well, you say that. I would say if you look at AOC's actual voting record, I think there's a disconnect between what you just said, which is how she's often perceived in left media, and I think her objective record. There are flaws. There are things I would criticize in that record, right? But I think characterizing her as being like nothing more than a cheerleader for the DNC, or like as if she just had the same politics as Chuck Schumer or somebody like that, I think is going way too far, right? I think that I think that like by and large, I think most votes that woman has cast are ones that you and I would want her to cast most of the time. And, again, you do have, you do have, I mean, there are times that I've criticized or whatever, but like, I also think the question is, look, you're not wrong. I don't disagree with you that if Zoran wins, which, I'm going to light some candles and sacrifice some goats and whatever I have to do to, encourage that to happen. Right. But if Zoran wins, then yeah, look, we don't know how effectively he's going to be able to counter the tremendous forces that are going to be stacked up against any attempt to implement his agenda. I don't expect miracles, and it's also possible. I mean, as much as I like what I've seen so far, right? It's also possible that maybe like he doesn't even like do what we want him to do. I mean, God knows it wouldn't be the first or 100th time that a left politician has disappointed, although I don't actually think that's more true of sort of Bernie-crats running in the Democratic line than it is of left politicians in countries with parliamentary systems where they can run on their own ballot line, right? It's entirely possible, right? I mean, this life and politics are full of disappointments. I mean, if you're a radical, if you're fundamentally opposed to the system around us and, the sort of basic economic structure of our society and American foreign policy and all of that, then you're going to lose a whole lot more than you're going to win, right? So it's like, I'm not saying it's not possible that this doesn't play out the way you say it does, but I would much rather actually fucking win something and be in a position to find out than just be engaged in the purely symbolic act of voting third party, which is all anybody would do if Zoran were running as a third party candidate, right? You have this sort of cathartic personal act of filling out this ballot line, but it would never actually lead to putting somebody in office. And I'd much rather put somebody in office and then have to worry about whether they follow through as much as I want them to do than I would be to just have it be a hypothetical forever. I mean, one broader way of thinking about this whole cluster of issues we've been talking about is, one danger that you might have for, and I think different versions of the socialist left in different times and places have faced both dangers, right? One danger is the danger of opportunism, that you'll get people who get a little bit of power and then, out of like pragmatism going too far, they sort of go against fundamental principles, or they sort of start to drift, towards politics that we don't like. That's one danger, the opportunist danger. But the other danger is, sectarianism and just sort of political impotence, right? That we continue to not be in a position to pop a damn grape, as you said earlier. And it seems to me that if you look at certainly my entire lifetime, and really I think the last few lifetimes of the American left, I just don't understand how anybody can look at it and conclude that opportunism is the bigger danger of the two. I think that's there have been times and places where that was a problem, but this isn't where that's the big problem. I mean, right now, our big problem is getting any kind of power in the first place, right? And opportunism is opportunism is a problem that you have when you've already gotten enough power that there's something to sell out. I mean, right now we don't have anything to sell. I mean, it's like saying if you're single and you're dating, it's oh, what if you meet somebody and then you get married and then it's an unhappy marriage? It's well, yeah, it could be, right? Lots of marriages are unhappy, but I don't think that's a good reason to stay single.
So you're pro-family?
Look at this. Oh, now we can't abolish the family.
Just trying to nail you down on something.
Babies. Ben wants to abolish families. Toussaint wants Madame out.
Listen,
this is the problem with the left.
There's no such thing as a punk album hitting number 1. Green Day, therefore, was not punk. So if Mamdani wins, he's no longer a leftist. See? That's how that works.
Jesus, I'm glad I'm not friends with your
Was
friends.
that bodega logic? What was that exactly?
That was fucking shitty.
I see a lot of people online talking like that.
But I think this is the difference between online and then the real world. And this is, I think, where this conversation to me gets a lot more interesting. Mm-hmm. When you talk about actually trying to organize, we have to be honest. Mm-hmm. Pascal, we have to be honest. We're pundits. We don't have any political affiliation. So we can come back and say whatever we want about anybody. Doesn't matter. We can throw grenades in a room all the time. Right? Right? We have to admit that.
True that.
And a lot of people feel like everybody's a pundit. I can say whatever I want, whenever I want. I don't have to make any sort of political affiliations. I'm not organizing anything. I'm kind of an army of me. But when you actually get out into the world, and if you're working with a political campaign, that's a lot of work. I don't know how many people here I think everybody here on the screen has either worked for a kind of fringe Democratic candidate or maybe a person that didn't even run on the Democratic ticket. And if we have done those things, it is a shit ton of work to lose.
And money.
Yeah. And are you willing to do it again and again and again and again and again and again? And you're going to make coalitions with people that don't agree with everything you say. And that to me is where it gets interesting. Do you stay the course? And that's one thing I saw more so in the NGO world, that people that are more radical don't really stay the course because they don't want to make any sort of agreements or coalitions or work within anything. They don't even want to try to build anything. And depending on where you work in the NGO world, let's say you work with Unhouse, for example, they're not the nicest people to work with. So when you come there with your, gorgeous, beautiful ideas and no one gives a shit, they those are the ones that quit the quickest. But you're generally left with a professional managerial class within the NGO world. And that's usually where a lot of the big city corruption comes from, right? And it feels like there's nobody even trying to get in these levers of power and work within. And when I first saw the title of the article, I laughed because I think we've all had these discussions privately about ultra leftists that we see online. But how many times do you actually have to deal with these people in the real world? Not as much as we think, but they do exist in the real world. And whatever gets accomplished with the ultra leftist platform, other than some freeways get shut down every so often.
I was actually pretty relieved by that title because, to be completely honest, in terms of how the sausage is made at Jacobin, in any magazine, writers don't get to pick the headlines. I mean, sometimes they might ask you for input, but I mean, it's not your decision. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in the past, I've written things for Jacobin that are a little spicy in the same kind of way, that I'm trying to, something is bothering me, and I'm trying to sort of get out this case about why I think it's misguided. And sometimes Jacobin will publish it with a headline that's so anodyne that nobody has any idea when they're scrolling past what it's about, and it just ends up getting lost in the shuffle, right? So honestly, I was actually pretty happy that they they use that headline, just because it's like, look, I mean, I'm not, you write something like this, I mean, obviously people are going to disagree with you. I mean, that's the deal, right? But the same way, I'd much rather people, achieve a little bit of political power. So the sort of temptations of opportunism or making too many compromises or whatever is even like something you have to worry about, right? I think that I'd much rather have people, read the article and then maybe get mad about it, or maybe even think about it, and inshallah, perhaps change, even like plant some seeds that might help some people think about this stuff a little bit differently. But one way or the other, I mean, I'd rather have them read it than just not notice it.
Pascal?
Well, I read it, that's for sure.
Yeah,
for the record,
I appreciate that. Actually, I do want to say that this is one thing I appreciate about this conversation. I had that it's anybody. I'm sure, Pascal, you've experienced this. You've written enough articles for different publications that you must have experienced this phenomenon, right? Like, most people who respond to articles are responding to headlines. And like maybe whatever image goes with the headline that goes in the thumbnail that gets posted on social media, right? At best, maybe that little deck up top where they summarize it, right? So, whereas I know you read the article, because what we started out talking about doesn't even come until like 3/4 of the way through the article.
That's true.
Toussaint, do you want to add anything whimsical?
I read the part where you said you hate families. I did read that. Definitely read those words.
You guys are so mean.
Yeah, no, that is what I said. Yeah, that's true.
Toussaint was like, Jason, can we get the person that wants no families on the show? Because I want to.
Hell with families. I hate my own family. That's what I said.
You actually speak very positively of families, and I was just like, oh, that's weird.
What is it weird?
Is it weird? I mean, I think that's what most people want, right? I mean, that's
how do you juxtapose your contention with family abolitionist types in the left with purported Marxist theories about marriage and what have been quotes that have been assumed to be made by Marx about what marriage means in the capitalist value system?
Sure. So, and by the way, Alex, the answer to it is I think it should go to the voters. I actually don't love any of that stuff, but that's a subject for another episode. Guys, just don't fall in love with fucking Gavin Newsom because you like some tweets. This guy, man,
I don't think anybody watching this show would like.
Anyway,
I feel confident in that.
It's his hair.
Sure. Anyway, to answer Pat's question, because it was a good question. So two things about that. First is I think it's really important, like whenever people who are socialists, who like Marx, who are influenced by Marx, are asking these questions about what Marx thought, I think it's just really important, just kind of as like intellectual hygiene, to keep in mind that, like, to keep separate the question of what did Marx think and like, is he right? Like, because like the guy had a lot of like valuable and enduring insights to offer in a lot of things. I mean, I just started teaching a new class on Capital, actually both volumes 1 and 2. I've done that a few times in the past. I obviously think there's a lot there that rewards close reading and that they're like good insights that hold up. But, the man certainly wasn't right about everything. But on this subject, I do agree with what is it that Sam, I think, said about Marx and Engels. So I think when people think about this, they're generally thinking about a couple things, right? One is they're thinking about a book that Engels wrote, the Origins of Family, Private Property, and the States, and then the other thing, the thing that's actually like Marx that they're thinking of when they think about family abolition, is a line in the Communist Manifesto, right? And in the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels say something like, communists are charged with abolishing the family, but look, capitalism, I mean, they don't use the word capitalism, but that's what they're saying, like bourgeois society, right? Capitalism is already abolishing the family all around us, right? And what they mean is like it's hard for working class people to keep families together or have a normal family life because the conditions of industrial revolution England and that they sort of have a crack in there about how like rich people are always having affairs anyway, right? And so they're like, I think their actual point in context in that passage is, it's a little flippant, right? But I mean, they're basically just turning around the accusation and saying, hey, look, you're all concerned about the family, but look at what's happening to it under capitalism. But sure, there's nothing, it's like, I get how somebody could read that passage and see some sympathy with the sort of themes that would be developed later by family abolitionists. I think it's really interesting to contrast that with what Marx writes about the family in Capital. Right, I think it's in like chapter 15. He's talking about factory machines, and he's talking in there about the workforce becoming co-ed. Right, that all of these jobs that it used to be that they were like really physically demanding jobs. The only people who did them were like big burly guys. Now you introduce these factory machines, and that meant you could have more child labor because and you could have more women in the factory because it's like the actual physical demands of operating the machine, are more amenable to that, right? And a lot of what Marx says about this, of course, as you'd expect, is he's pretty horrified. In fact, he's so horrified by some of this that some of it maybe doesn't date well. He seems a little Victorian in some of his attitudes about women working in factories. But whatever you think about that, there's a really interesting passage where he says, okay, but as bad as a lot of this stuff is, maybe having, it not just be the fact that there's like a single breadwinner, going off to the factory every day anymore. Now the wife, children, are going to the factory too, that this could, this could, as brutal as this is under capitalism, this could be laying the basis for something good in the future. And it's actually like a really interesting, like nuanced kind of passage. And all I could think about when I was writing that, right, is that in 1848, when the Communist Manifesto came out, right? Marx was not even 30 yet, right? He was 29 years old, right? In 1867, when Capital comes out, he's almost 50. He has a large family of his own, right? And I think sort of writing a short agitational pamphlet in his late 20s, I think the emphasis is much more sort of edgy, right? Whereas when he's writing his long theoretical work, when he's almost 50, he's much more sort of cautious and reflective about the whole subject. And what he says about the family in that passage is not like, oh, we should like get rid of it. He says, well, look, the family has taken many forms and different kinds of societies that have existed from ancient Greece and Rome to this and that to the, sort of Christian Germanic conception now. And of course, it would be very foolish to just assume that this is the final form of whatever is going to come, right? And I think that's totally reasonable, right? The point is not that like what family norms are, how people relate to each other in that setting is going to stop evolving historically. I mean, I'm sure it's going to evolve historically in all sorts of ways that we wouldn't be able to predict in advance, right? But when you say you want to abolish the family, right, then one, I think if you take that language seriously, if you want to abolish something, right, that would mean that you're going to get rid of it like right away, right? Somebody in like 1850 who said that, well, I'm going to try to champion policies that mean that like, maybe in the next 100 years we can phase out, sooner or later in 100 years or 200 years, maybe we won't have slavery anymore. Nobody would have called that person an abolitionist, right? Abolish is a word that you use when you're talking about abrupt extreme change. And in particular, it sounds awfully prescriptive to me. It sounds like we're saying, oh, we want people to live in some different way than living in like an individual household with their partner and their kids. And it seems to me that, look, I don't think maybe this is just a philosophical difference, I have with some of my friends and comrades, but it's like, I don't think it's the business of the left to tell people how to live their individual lives, right? I think that as long, within reasonable limits, respecting the rights of other people, I think that people, should be allowed to make their own decisions. If some people want to experiment with more communal forms of living together, that's great. But if other people want to have families in the sense that we think of now, that's great too. And the point is, we should be giving them the economic means to live whatever kind of life they want to live, right? So people will say things like, "Oh, actually, if you think about it, Medicare for all is an abolitionist policy because now people don't have to rely on their family for healthcare, and so you can opt out of the family." It's like, okay, first of all, just on a rhetorical level, that's asinine because you're tying a popular policy to the single most unpopular way that you could possibly package it. But even putting rhetoric aside, even just on the substance of it, right? It's like, well, no, if you're making it easier for people to opt out of something who don't want it, but you're also making it easier for people to opt into it who do want it, that's not abolishing it, right? That's a bizarre way to use the word abolish, right? It's like abolishing families would mean we're going to do something so we just don't have any families anymore, right? Like that's what that would mean if we're serious about the way that we use words, right? I think what we should want is to create a more materially equal society where people have their needs met and they can live however they want to live. And some people want to live in polyamorous communes, good for them, none of my business, right? But I think probably what most people want, right, at least right now, is to be able to have families, right, to live together with a long-term partner, to if they want kids, to raise kids in that household with a long-term partner. And I just don't see anything wrong with that.
Are you arguing that words have meaning?
Yeah.
It's such an odd formulation. It's so hard to follow. Abolish? Wow.
I mean, abolish
Okay.
is a hot word, right? It means you're serious about whatever you say.
I think that's what a lot of people get from it when they say it.
Abolish the pull-ups.
Abolish the pull-ups.
The
This is
pull-ups.
big boy pants. This is big boy pants only. Abolish.
Oh, I see.
That's because I'm pro fancy. Don't
Well,
abolish pull-ups. Don't abolish pull-ups.
the kids need them.
The kids definitely need them. Yeah. I wanted to ask Pascal a question and cut you off because you're a woman.
Wow. Wow. And then he's going to end the show. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Pascal, is there a risk that in compromising with moderates or liberals to pass reforms, we dilute socialist politics beyond recognition?
I think there's a risk when you compromise with them if you compromise on the principles of socialism. In other words, if compromising means that we have to surrender to neoliberal edicts, in other words, like privatize healthcare or privatize schools or end public school education in order to, say, I don't know, get books, I don't think we should agree to that. So I think it's a possibility. It's not always the case. In other words, to answer your question directly, I do not think it's always going to happen that compromising with moderates and liberals means that we have to totally eschew socialist ideas. I think there are examples we have, for example, during the New Deal, during the Roosevelt administration, where the radical left forced concessions by liberals to introduce more socialistic or socialist-like policy, Social Security, university, other forms, Medicare, so on and so forth, into the United States. However, at the same time, it's easy for us to sacrifice our principles in cooperating with those liberals as well.
How do you think the outrage-driven nature of social media platforms affects political discourse and strategy on the left?
I think social media is very bad for left politics in that everyone is rage baiting. So people are trying to get clickbait attention instead of putting forth thought out ideas that are trying to pass muster in the political and ideological thoroughways of American society. It's performance bait.
Toussaint, I will cede the floor to you.
All right. Well, I'm going to see if I can pull all of these threads together. So I wanted to get an idea of where Ben thinks this comes from. Because in the article, it seems like you feel these leftists actually have disagreements on how things should be done and approaches and different opinions. But to Jason's point, once they're in real life working on a project, that seems to, I don't want to say disappear, maybe dissipate. It's just not the same formulation. So in my mind, this has to do with the fact that there isn't like a movement going on. I feel things were different when Bernie was running, and people still had their differences and their arguments, but without Bernie and before Zoran, there was a period where people didn't really know what to do with each other. So there's this term first coined by Florence Kennedy in 1970 called horizontal hostility. And this refers to conflict, prejudice, and aggressive behavior within or between similar groups, especially marginalized ones, that should theoretically be unified, but instead turn against each other, often due to challenges to the status quo or internal dynamics, whatever, right? So they just turn their guns on each other as opposed to turning their guns on power. I think without the movement, people become afraid, and it's easier, even if you bother to go to a protest, to say that guy is not as left as me because he's wearing slave labor sneakers.
The circular firing squad
Yeah.
of morality. Do you think, though, that the downside to the quote unquote Bernie movement is that it's so entrenched in the electoral system that it kind of makes people different flavors of Democrat or Republican?
I mean, I don't even know.
Like what I mean is, Alex Michel, who came down here, we were working on kayfabe stuff a couple weekends ago. He does work with some people running for politics, running for office, but he also does a lot of stuff kind of outside of electoralism. He's
You're
always
doxing him?
Am I doxing him? No. Don't do that shit in secret. Like, come on. Like, stop. Everybody stop acting like they're fucking. I'm so fucking covert. Like, shut up.
He does revolutionary graffiti.
Yeah, no, he does not.
Okay.
No. But how many people are just kind of stuck on how you vote, who you're going to vote for, who are we going to elect? Because once that election cycle is over, then what? Because a lot of things what people have been saying in the chat, which I find really interesting, is if so-and-so wins in the Democratic Party, they're no longer beholden to the voters. I'm like, well, why do you think that way? I'm just asking the question, why do you think that way?
And why would there be like, what's the mechanism to make them beholden to the voters if they won as independents or as Green Party candidates? Like, that's the other half of that question. I mean, look, I mean, I think that, I think electoral politics are one really important thing that we can do. Although I think that the way you just put it is important, right? That's like, okay, is everything just about who you're voting for, right? In other words, about that individual choice, or is it about what you're doing in the sense of like doing things like actually campaigning, right? I mean, that's a different thing than just sitting around arguing on the internet about who you're going to vote for. But look, I mean, I think I would just have the like really, boringly traditional Marxist answer here, right? That I think that the most important thing ultimately, right, is an organized working class, right? That, because like in the system that we're in right now, right, like under capitalism, as a working class person, like where do you have power, right? Like in what ways do you have power? Like there are lots of things that activists can do that we can call organizing, and might even have some value. I'm not saying they don't, but but that don't actually involve wielding any kind of power, because in most realms, most people don't have any real power, right? I mean, if there's very little you can do as a consumer, there's very little, I mean, if you're like, living on the streets, if everybody who's living on the streets gets together, there's just not a lot they have a capacity to do together to hurt the system, right? I think the place where ordinary people have the most power, you have some at the ballot box, of course, right? But then you have that problem about, people being held accountable. And the problem is like structural, right? That's like, you have to have enough of a movement in place that people are going to, that like politicians would even think twice about pissing you off because you're in a position to actually do something. It's like a real threat. Oh, we're not going to campaign for you next time. And I think but I think the main place that people have power under capitalism is the workplace, right? That because this is a system that relies on the labor of ordinary people to make every wheel turn. I think that that's where people, if they're organized, have the most power to affect change under this system, right? So I think that I think the thing you should, my view is that the thing you should do in between elections and also during elections, right, but is to build up a bigger and more militant labor union, which I know it's easy to say words, and just saying that is a very different thing than actually knowing how to do it. That's why I think we both interviewed Eric Blanc, for example, who I think has interesting things to say about that, right?
He does.
But it's like I think strategically, I'm not saying that's the only thing anybody should do, but I think strategically that's maybe the most important thing to do.
What say you, Tucson?
I was watching a video earlier today about a woman named Sierra who was on Love Island. And apparently before she was on the show, people found something about her online where she used a slur against Asian people. And eventually the producers, they like woke her up in the middle of the night to let her get off the show.
So they were like, it looks like here in 2007 on Facebook, you said, I don't want any ching chongs fucking up my order again.
Yikes.
And we're going to have to get you off the show.
Yeah. And it was the second time they did it.
Second time she said ching chongs?
Not to her. They did it to another woman earlier. So
What
when
did
she
they
was
say?
like, why are you doing this? They were like, didn't you see the first girl? Get out of here.
Wait, so what did the other person say?
She said something else that was another slur.
Who
As-
got the slur this time? I want to know. It's fine.
Oh, I don't remember. But this woman, Sierra, hers was against Asian people. And so she gets kicked off the show. She makes an accountability video where she says that, look, after I said it all those years ago, people came to me and they explained to me why it was wrong. So now I'm not even that person anymore. And it sucks that I'm off the show and whatever, right? But regular people would find ways to hold this woman accountable for what she said on social media all those years ago. I don't see people knowing how to do that to Zoran when he inevitably disappoints them, which is a good thing. I look forward to being disappointed in him at some point, because that means he's in office and he's doing something.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have actually achieved something to be disappointed. Otherwise, it's still all hypothetical, right? And like, I mean, the argument I made in the book, the canceling comedians while the world burns, is that kind of like moralistic culture of like, getting mad at people for the stupid shit they said on Twitter 10 years ago, which, thank God I wasn't on Twitter 10 or 20 years ago. Like it's not like I've never said anything stupid, but there wasn't a permanent record of it. But like, it's just like the question is like, why did you asked this earlier, right? You asked this a few minutes ago, like, why do people do this? Mm-hmm. Right? Like why do people do this stuff? And I think both stuff like that, and also I think some of the bad leftist stuff. I mean, I think you're right that it's gotten much worse post Bernie and pre-Zoran, and like I was kind of hoping that Zoran, would be enough of a positive example to correct it, and I think it has to some extent, at least in New York, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's still, a lot of the stuff is still a big problem, right? It's just like, look, what I argued in the book is there's the pathologies of powerlessness, right? People who don't think they have any real power to change anything substantial, right? Like end up retreating to this kind of symbolic protest, which can include, like, as long as it's just symbolic anyway, you might as well just protest against each other. If anything, it might even be better, because like, if you're getting mad at some politician you're never going to meet, like, like it's a little bit harder to get under their skin, right? If you're getting mad at, some chick who's on Love Island, right? That's you might actually be able to ruin her day. I mean, this is what, I should have said this in the book. If I'd thought of this, I would have, but the pithiest version of this was from our friend Conan when he was in Rosarito, right? That if you can't get justice, you'll settle for catharsis.
Mm-hmm. I just want to apologize for a tweet that I made several years ago. I said that I donated money to Hamas and that they told me it was for books for school kids. But I knew, I kind of knew it wasn't for that.
You've been in a really cheeky mood all episode, huh?
I was just thinking about the apologist thing. Former TIR guest Amber Lee Frost said something about this a long time ago that I always liked, which is that there's no such thing as a public apology. All real apologies are delivered in private.
Ooh.
Shakalaka.
I mean, everybody is their own PR person right now, and they feel they have to make these public apologies like people care. I mean, if you're so self-righteous that someone can say something in their youth and not change the way they feel, like ever. Oh, it's a sad state of the world. I don't want to be around someone that knows how the world works at 21.
Yeah, it's been a long time, so my memory is fuzzy, but I'm pretty sure I was a dumbass when I was 21.
I mean, I was a dad.
Not necessarily incompatible with being a bit of a dumbass.
I apologize to my kid all the time. I was going through this past weekend just apologizing for no reason. I'm so sorry I was your dad.
That lady that suits Shannon Sharp, I don't think she's 21 yet, but she probably would know how the world works at 21.
First, you have to be hot.
Then you have to retire from
Then
only.
you have to be okay with fucking a guy that smells like Bengay.
She's retired. Oh my god.
Would you bang a dude at 21 that smelled like Bengay and Dracar Noir?
Yeah.
Dracar Noir.
Take it back.
Can you imagine? I mean, he's in great shape, but he still has 50-plus-year-old testicles.
Better than Jupe.
Jupe. With this show.
Yikes.
That wouldn't turn you on?
No.
No? Even if he was making it rain with 20s?
Oh my gosh, that's so weird. I mean, he does have a very nice physique, and he has that very much going for him.
You know, he's got
At that
smooth.
age.
It's just smooth everywhere. Just smooth.
But he's probably taking a lot of the pills, you know.
He's moisturized.
Very, I'm sure.
Right? When was the last time you touched a moisturized man's hand, Tucson?
Oh my gosh. Probably the last time I saw you in New York.
The hand is moisturized. You gotta have questions because what is he doing there?
I'm just moist, Pascal. Goddamn.
Look at that.
Walking around moist.
No, Drea, I'm not hiding. When we started the stream, it was much lighter, and I'm sitting right by the window, and I haven't gotten up to turn on a light, so now it looks like I'm, Colonel Kurtz at the end of Apocalypse Now. But
I'm with Alex on this.
between the
Ben, I went to go pick up my mail the other day at the mail place, and the lady that owns it shook my hand, and she was like, "What is that on your hands?" I was like, "Lotion. You've been shaking these ashy-handed niggas all day long. These old rough-handed ass dude."
And then you told her you used to work on the oil rig.
Yep. And then I went like this. Just
smoothness.
Like this. She just almost fainted, Tucson. I had to just like, oh.
Well, speaking of trips to New York, I'm going to be in New York. I'm flying to New York a week from today, and if anybody is around on Friday of next week, so that's Friday, September 12th, at Bar Frida in Queens, which is, since that's like part owned by our.
I thought it was in Brooklyn. We were in Queens.
Yeah, we're in Queens, man. That's the bar that's part owned by our friend TJ, who set up the previous live shows. So we're going to do meet and greet, happy hour kind of thing. MT will 100% for sure be there. She actually promised before we started recording. So you can meet her, you can meet me. There's Jake and Andy are both going to be there. Producer emeritus Kale is going to be there, so should be a good time. That's going to be starting at 6:00, and they're not charging a cover, but buy drinks.
Tucson, if you're going to go, make sure at least 4 other black people go, so everyone doesn't just know you're there.
We'll just Mill about, as the Brits say.
Just the one. Are you Toussaint? You know I did that. You know I did that before I met you.
You just
What?
went around to black women asking if they were Toussaint.
We were at the KGB bar with Doug Lane. Wait, were you there? No, I don't think you were there. We were at the KGB bar with Doug Lane, and I swore Toussaint was coming to that bar, and there was a black woman walked in, and I thought that was her. And I'm all grinning in this woman's face. She was like, "Who is this goofy ass?"
I remember you told me about this.
Gilbert Grape looking.
That's what you get for profiling.
Yeah, no, I believe I was not there because this is the event that Doug organized at the last minute.
Yes.
That conflicted with the event that I've been promoting for months.
Yes, that sounds like some things that would happen with the character. Tony Red says, "When are you motherfuckers coming to Norman, Oklahoma?" Oof.
Windows flapping. Beep, beep, beep. Dig if you will. Look when I engage again.
I think that means the show went well. Here you guys. Someone said Toussaint could be an Oakland Filipina with that New York accent. She can't say ball without adding a W.
Oh, Paul said that. He was like, "Did you just call me Bubble?"
Dude, Toussaint and Pascal are so from New York. Who is less from New York than those two people? Who's the most New York person we've had on the show?
Oh,
that is out New York, you two.
Was.
Oh, yeah.
Waz.
That's true. Good call. Shout out to Waz.
Yeah.
Waz is the most New York. Waz. Now you can walk around Los Angeles with the title. You are the most New York Negro walking around Los Angeles, California right now. Put one pant leg up from now on when you walk around.
Oh my gosh. Nobody does that anymore, Jason.
That's so LL Cool J 1995.
Look at
Exactly.
Says the motherfucker that brought up Jupe.
Coconut of the Court. I actually did see Cuba a couple weeks ago. He gave me a extreme walking tour of Vancouver. I think we were walking for like 5 hours or something.
And I still have Cuba's Christmas present, which I'm giving to you tomorrow, so you can mail it when you go to New York.
Oh my gosh.
I can do that.
I keep forgetting to give it to you. Anyway, thank you guys for watching the show. We are going to the Champagne Room. If you want to join us in the Champagne Room, where Toussaint wants to torture me with videos of a fashionista. What is it?
Fashionista.
You said he's my, what do you call him?
Oh, I don't know what I called him. I don't know. Your New York fashion counterpart.
I don't think so.
He's a model.
Okay, that's great. I'm not.
He has nice legs.
Mine are way better though.
Oh.
Yeah.
Please don't show us. You
sure?
Oh.
At least put that behind the paywall.
Well, look, wherever you guys are watching or listening to the show, there is a link in the description to Ben's article. Politics are supposed to convince people it's not about grandstanding. I think I used too many words, but that's around what it says. There's a link. Doesn't matter what I say. We're going to the Champagne Room. Oh my
God. Please show us, Jason.
I'm trying to end the show like a professional. And oh God. And then you guys just, Sean Moon wants to make fun of me for 8th grade when I had acid wash jeans and ski boots thinking I was Jodeci. Damn. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us. We will see you. I'll see you guys tomorrow when I speak with Alex Cooley. It goes down. We're going to duel it out. Total capitalism versus techno-feudalism. Who wins?
Hmm.
And we are out.
Out.